Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. There's an interesting thing that happens when you as an athlete start to play better and better and better, especially if you're coming off not playing your best or not feeling as confident. And a really great example of this comes from an athlete that I am currently working with in one-on-one coaching. Now, she and I have been working together for a while. We've been working together all the way since last season. This is the second season that we've worked together. And now, something that she and I have spent a lot of time managing and overcoming has been performance anxiety, where she's felt very anxious to compete. She's also been very anxious about what coach is going to do in terms of putting her in the lineup and so on. But this season, she's done fantastic when it comes to managing that anxiety, and she's been playing most every single game, and she's been playing very well. But interestingly enough, this past weekend, she had a game where she felt like she did not play well. Then she ended up having a couple practices where she felt like she was performing poorly. And so her confidence began to drop. And then she and I had our weekly session yesterday. Now, during our weekly session yesterday, she caught me up on everything that had been happening, and she told me about the recent game she played this past weekend. But now before that, right, before that game this weekend, she had played 2 other games, and those 2 other games had been incredible games. In fact, she had gotten a reward from her coach, or an award from her coach, for being the best player in one of those games. So what was happening was that she was playing really well. However, there tends to be this feeling that a lot of athletes experience, and a lot of us as athletes experience, where when we are doing well, and if this isn't something that we are necessarily accustomed to, so maybe we're coming off of, a long period of time where we feel like we've underperformed, but then we are starting to play well, that good performance or those good performances can almost feel uncomfortable. Now, this isn't something that's likely happening consciously, but subconsciously it can feel uncomfortable. Then what accompanies that feeling is that because it feels uncomfortable, we're not quite used to this success, and we love this success so much, it can lead to this feeling of, when's it going to end? I've been playing well, but when is this going to end? I hope it sticks around. And then we can almost become afraid of performing poorly again, because then we feel like we're not going to be able to get back to the way we were playing before. And that's exactly what this player was talking to me about, how she didn't feel like she played well this past weekend, and then she felt like her confidence has dropped. Practices have not been going well, so she feels like she lost it, right? So she's stressed that she won't be able to get back to the way she was before. But what's really interesting is that she talked to her coach right after the game this past weekend, and she told her coach that she knows that she can play better, and so she was kind of apologizing to the coach for the way she played. Now, do you think that the coach turned around and said, yeah, I know that you can play a lot better. Today wasn't a great game? No. The coach said, well, I didn't think you played very badly today. I thought you had a decent game. I thought you had a nice, good, average game. So she was critical of herself, or very critical of herself, but her coach, on the other hand, did not see her as having played as badly as the player thought she did. Then she talked to her assistant coach during practice on Monday, and her assistant coach told her the same exact thing. The game this past weekend was not that bad. Now, her coaches have historically not been ones to, sugarcoat things or pamper to her feelings. They've always been ones to tell her pretty straight. And so since that's the case, she can trust that her coaches are not just trying to, make her feel good. Her coaches are telling her the truth. But what can end up happening is that as we're playing well, and this fear starts to grow where we are afraid of losing this good performance, we become hypercritical of ourselves when it comes to our games. And so instead of saying, yeah, that was a good game, and allowing this confidence to build upon itself and these good games to create this positive momentum, because we are afraid of losing those good games, right, or losing this hot streak that we're on, let's say, we can start to pinpoint and kind of, be hypercritical of any little mistake that we made. Then that turns a game that was, a pretty decent and average game into a bad game in our minds. Then when that turns into a bad game in our minds, we carry that lack of confidence forward. Then we are more hyper aware of any sort of mistake or anything that might feel off during practice. And so we become more self-conscious, and we are overthinking. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because overthinking, being too self-conscious when you play and hyper-aware of little mistakes, will naturally drop your confidence, and it's also going to hurt your performance. And that's what this athlete has experienced this week during practices. So what I was talking to her about yesterday is, number one, making sure that she is not being too critical of herself during her games. Yes, she wants to identify things she needs to improve. But we don't want to make broad generalizations of that was a bad game. I know I can play better. It was far below my potential, because that's not really serving us any positive purpose. Because it's only downplaying the fact that we did do things well. And the truth is, if you're on a hot streak and you're starting to play really well and you are experiencing more success within your sport than you have experienced in a while, it is natural for you to feel this fear that you're going to lose it all. But the truth is, you don't have to lose it all. You're probably not going to play at that extreme level constantly and consistently, so you will have these little dips. But the little dips, if you're going from playing extremely well, the little dips are just going to go back to you playing well, right? And decent and average, and that's completely fine. But in our minds, because we're holding ourselves to this high standard and because we have this fear, we're going to interpret that dip in our performance as performing really poorly. And the danger there is if we interpret that as performing very poorly, our confidence will drop. And again, we're going to start becoming more critical of ourselves and hyperfixating on any sort of little thing that feels off and any little mistake that we're making during practices or games. So that was the first thing that I talked to her about. I was talking to her about how she has to be kinder to herself, but most importantly, she has to recognize that her game was not that bad and she needs to see the positives. Because we are trying to work on building confidence and we're trying to work on creating positive momentum. Positive momentum requires us to see the things we're doing well. As soon as we step in and say that game was really, really bad, I think I've lost it all, I hope I haven't lost it all, and we start to feel those feelings of fear and anxiety about being able to continue this really good play, that's where we are killing our momentum. But in addition to that, I was also talking to her about the idea of how she can regain her confidence. And this is something that I see in a lot of the athletes I work with when they do feel like their performance has dropped a little bit. They feel like their confidence has as well. So now they're waiting for another good performance in order to have that confidence return. But what she and I were discussing was that at the beginning of this season, her confidence was down as well. Her anxiety was high. She was concerned as to whether or not she would play a lot. And so she wasn't exactly at peak levels of confidence. But she was still able to play well. And the reason she was able to play well was because instead of waiting for herself to feel confident, she focused on playing in the way that would lead to better performances. She focused on controllable actions when she was out there, and she focused on giving full effort, and she also just focused on enjoying herself and having fun. And so in our conversation yesterday, I was asking her about whether or not she could do those things, take those actions, have that mindset without a feeling of confidence. And she said yes. Because while a feeling of confidence makes it easier for us to play aggressively, it's not required. While a feeling of confidence makes it easier for us to enjoy ourselves when we play, again, it's not required. So by focusing on these controllable actions and the controllable ways of feeling and thinking, she will be generating better practices and better games. And then as a result of that, we know the confidence will return. But the reason I wanted to make this video or this episode discussing this idea is because it's something that I see in a lot of athletes, especially when they do experience these higher levels of performances coming off of times where they haven't been playing well. And most of the athletes I work with, and I know most of the people that listen to the podcast and watch the YouTube videos, they are athletes who struggle with anxiety, fear, self-doubt. So when they do end up playing well, we know that those feelings of worry and fear, they're still there to some extent. Right? And so then they become attached to this idea of, can I keep up this really good performance? And we have to recognize that, yes, we can keep up this good performance, but the fear itself can cause us to be too critical of any sort of drop in our performance, which then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because we feel like our performance has dropped. We feel like we've lost this hot streak and this success. And so then that fear, that low confidence returns, and then our play returns to being timid, being scared. And again, then we're starting to underperform. So for yourself, if you are currently playing really well, don't become hypercritical of your mistakes and feel like now you're going to lose it all. Make sure that you're still seeing the positives because we need to create that positive momentum. And if you aren't playing well right now, I would encourage you to take the second piece of advice that I gave the athlete, which was instead of focusing on feeling confident in order to play well, let's focus on controllable actions. What are the actions that you need to take when you're performing and you're competing? And what are the controllable mindsets that you need to have in order to put yourself in a position to play your best? Because then when you start to play your best and you do get those results and those outcomes that you want, what you're going to find is that the confidence naturally stems from that because it is a natural byproduct of those actions and of those good performances. If you have any questions about this video, please let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in any of the sports psychology programs I have available, I've put links to those in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.